いよいよラスベガス、やっとここまで来ましたね。アメリカでアメリカ人のブラントとやる。勝てば。
In power, I mean Magnus. How come a hero that was not popular before the patch, a hero that got almost no meaningful changes, suddenly becomes one of the highest win rates in the game, while also having such a high pick rate? The first reason is the at least initial heavy emphasis on stats that the Frog decided to force people on. If we compare an old anti-mage that had a Magnus in his team, he would have these items at a certain stage. First, because Vlad sucked in the old patch, maybe he would get an Aquila depending on the game, but since the item doesn't exist anymore and since not everyone went for it anyways, I will omit the item for the sake of comparison, and because the new threads is better than the old one, so I'm using that as a small buff to him and kinda compensates. So the old anti-mage gets 36 damage, and the new one gets 43. Obviously, you need to remember that the Wraith Bands got nerfed a lot, and Empower got nerfed, but while the difference in damage might seem small, let's compare the DPS here. As you can see, the extra agility makes this AM 30% stronger than the old one with Empower. And obviously, this is true for most agility heroes. Some of them don't necessarily go for 3 Wraith Bands, but that agility just propels any right-clickers to benefit more from Magnus. That's not the only reason for Magnus to be so good though, or maybe that's the reason that enables the other reasons. The fact of the matter is, Mag can be anything but a position 1 hero in this patch, which allows players in both pubs and official matches to just snatch the hero as a first phase hero, and even if he cannot lane middle or off lane, you can still run the Magnator as a support. This game right here is a great showing of that. Moonmeander is babysitting a PA, and since the jungle camps are way safer, stacking, especially when you can enable your cores to farm them super early, is amazing. With the buffs to with more gold for players that stack camps, you can actually get some small items in the early game, and that's just super beneficial. It's still too early to say, but support Magnus could be better or just as good as core Magnus. Since the focus is so much on Empower, the fact that supports just follow the cores around in the mid game makes sure that those cores will have Empower up 100% of the time, whereas the core Magnus is a lot of the time, especially right as the laning stage breaks, will be farming something like a Blink Dagger, and you know, usually when you're farming, and I mean, usually the cores, they just farm away from each other just because you're gonna be competing for the same farm. Obviously, the support Magnus will take longer to get level 4 in power, but the love he gives will be frequent and tender. And I'm not even joking, Moonmeander just followed this PA around and made sure to give her mana and power while stacking for her, even though he was level 5 until the 13-minute mark. And while Empower is definitely one of the reasons as to why this hero is good, even as a support he will eventually get a Blink Dagger, and then RP also becomes a threat. Obviously Magnus is not a great lane support since he doesn't harass very well, but to be fair, now that crews don't give experience for the Denier, you can get away with weaker lanes, especially if your carry has a way to get back into the game with all the stacks you're gonna give him. Another benefit of Empower in general is that in late game scenarios where 2 cores are 6 slotted, the Magnus team will always have an inherent advantage because of the skill. PA farmed very well this game, but AM was ahead of her pretty much throughout the entire game. In fact, when it looked like Radiant was going to win the game, AM plus Beastmaster, even with 2 heroes dead in their team, get a better trade with 2 lanes of barracks falling thanks to that brain dead PA having no TP. That being said, you cannot underestimate how Magnus and a bunch of hero combinations can shape a game. Look at this puck. This guy built Aeon Disc, has 40 armor, no Blink Dagger, just so he can feel safe against the PA and actually play Dota 2. He gets the armor talent, and even then, he just gets shredded. As you can see, AM is still ahead of PA in farm, but Empower shapes up the game in weird ways. The effective net worth that this Phantom Assassin has is way higher than the AM. Right now, this PA is getting 105 extra damage with 100% cleave from Magnus. There's no item that even gives these stats to anyone. She literally has a 7 slot because there's no way she could carry another item at this stage anyways. It's not like core Magnus is bad. The hero lanes relatively well, and as long as you make sure to enable your cores with Empower, they will farm as fast as if you had a support Magnus. This game was dead even for 20 minutes until Void goes for a kill on the anti-mage. Rubik was in the fight as well, but he makes the mistake of using Spell Steal during Chrono, which allows SCC to get a 3-man RP, and even without the AM, they find the burst damage to get the kill. The usual difference between core mags and supports is that you can focus way more in enabling your cores as a support, but as a core there's more responsibility in actually doing meaningful stuff. Usually you will see DRP talent being picked by core Magnus at level 25 and more of an emphasis in landing the ult. That being said, regardless of the position you're playing, since buildings are overall weaker now and Empower feels stronger on cores because of the Wraith bans and because they're going to be farming safer, what happens is that winning one fight can give you a lane of barracks way earlier than the ult patch. Radiant ends up disengaging here after the Axe buys back, but the game ends shortly after that. The Axe dies back, his team dies, and he just shows up to say hello later. In summary, support Magnus is probably better than you think if you compare it to offlane Magnus. The win rate using only the very high tier of Dota players showcases support Magnus with 84% win rate against 52% of the offlane Magnus. I think one of the reasons for this is that Magnus is so contested that you have to pick it as a first or second pick, meaning that the enemy can get a good lane against the Magnus and good picks against the hero overall, and maybe ruin his game enough that he cannot really play around the cores and buff them. Support Magnus doesn't need to have a perfect lane. As long as you empower your carry, get some stacks done, and try to get some skewer back plays, you're going to be fine, and the win rate definitely corroborates that. Guys, thank you for liking, commenting, and subscribing in this video. As you know, I'm trying to stream every single day, and while I know all of you guys like my videos, I would really appreciate if you can also follow me on Twitch, because getting good viewership can allow me to get a better chance of being a Dota 2 talent. I have a Patreon where you can actually get something in return while helping me follow this dream that I have. And there's also Twitter, where I talk memes and Dota. There's a Twitch that I already talked about, where I play and cast. And if you're into Instagram or Discord, I do have links for that in the description as well. Thank you all for watching, and bye.